I'm Luke Morrow in for Reggie today alongside John Lopez and Figgy Fig. Hey, is the AFC South being slept on? Could it be more like the NFC North from last year? We'll get to that in a moment. I'm filling in for Reggie. It's always a pleasure to be here. I do feel a little bit like him after hearing that intro because the text line, that phone number used to be pasted up here in the studio. It's not anymore. So I had to write it down on an old piece of mail I found in my bag just so I remember.
What's the mail? I'm just kidding.
It's a HelloFresh coupon.
Oh, I got to tell y'all something.
I like HelloFresh.
Yeah. About I forget what the question was of the day was when we were talking about the IRS. Seth was bringing up the IRS. I forget what it was. Like
stuff that scare you.
Yeah, the stuff that scares you.
Kind of, simple things that kind of scare you.
Just as sure as you could imagine. I opened the mailbox yesterday. I have a letter from the IRS.
Uh-oh.
That's what we all both said. And she had a letter to the IRS.
Separately, man.
We each got a letter from the IRS. And I'm like, that damn Seth. Because I said I've never been audited, ever in my life.
They must be looking at Instagram. You making too much money off that OG sauce.
Yeah, that's right.
You ain't paying no taxes, buddy.
Hey, shh. Actually, I am. For the record, people who work for the IRS, you have my forms. Anyway. So I was like, oh, crap. And to the point where, like, we didn't even want to open it. We were staring at it for a while. You know, you get those letters, and you're just like, oh, this is it. So I opened mine, which I'm sure, which ended up being, of course, the same in hers. They miscalculated something in our tax return. So we actually got a $255 break of what we paid.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we got a credit.
Wow, good news.
Holy crap.
Okay, that's a good one right there.
That was close. I was like, that damn Seth. We're talking about not getting audited, and I get audited. But no, I actually got $255.
There you go.
Hey, you just don't get like bright spots when the IRS send you a letter.
Has that ever happened? They go, hey, man, our bad.
No, right.
Our bad.
People don't give things back. Nice. That's nice. You open that up. That's a nice present.
Mm-hmm.
Go out for a nice meal at the Sizzler with that.
At least one.
Yeah.
At least one.
On the text line, by the way, that number is 713-572-4610. I've lost these text messages now, so I'm going to paraphrase. Sorry, I'm not shouting out your number. One person said, give McCullers a month before we start having those conversations, 5 to 6 starts. That's fair. And then another text I see here from the 954 said, how long are we going to put Walker in the 4th slot, put Cam Smith in right field, Zach DeZenzo to first base, and bench Christian Walker? I don't think, just like McCullers, I don't think you're benching Christian Walker yet after giving him the contract you did in the offseason, and also because of the back of his baseball card.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went there because that's what was said about Abreu, and famously by Jeff Bagwell, and we were giving him a hard time. It might happen, but remember what happened with Abreu. They stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed until they even sent him to Florida once. Remember that?
It was 2 years with him, right?
Yeah. So
we went through this for 2 years with him.
Yeah, it might happen, but it isn't going to happen yet.
No, it's too early into that contract, but yeah, maybe eventually. All right, I teased this. Could the AFC South this year be like the NFC North last year, which was a surprise division, put 3 teams in the playoffs? That probably sounds crazy if you're a Texans fan, but I'll lay out my case in a moment. First, I would just, to tee it up, I would ask, how do you feel about this division? Do you feel comfortable in the Texans, the expectations that the Texans should comfortably win the division this year?
I do want to get to your point because I thought it was an interesting one, and I actually wrote down a couple of, sort of devil's advocate. How would state the case that the division could be good? But to answer your question, I think the division is the Texans. It's going to absolutely be the Texans, start to finish. I could see that. I think we did our game-by-game pick-em yesterday with B. Scott, and I had them winning, I think, all but one or either all of their division games this year. They're going to win the division. But state your case, because I did write down a couple of notes on, what if this division is good?
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, too, because I'm with you. This is the Texans division, but I can be a bit neurotic. So I was looking at the schedule breakdown after the schedules came out the other night, and it got me a little worried, because the reason why I compare it to the NFC North last year is the Vikings, the Bears, the Packers, even the Lions, all overachieved last year. They exceeded expectations. And when you go back and you look, all of those teams played top 9 easiest schedules last year. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that schedule was playing the AFC South, but the Packers, Lions, Vikings, they had 3 of the best records in the NFC, and they got to beat up on some weaker competition. Okay, how does that relate to the AFC South? Well, if you look at the schedules this year, everybody except the Texans in that division, the Titans, the Colts, the Jaguars, have top 9 easiest schedules this year. And you might think, well, these teams aren't very good. They might win a few more games, but not enough with these schedules because they're not good enough. Fair. But if you go back and look, the Vikings last year, their win total was 6.5. They ended up winning 14 games and made the playoffs. It's been 5 straight years that a team with a win total under 7 to start the year ended up making the playoffs. Could that be the Colts or the Jaguars this year schedules? Could this division actually be better than a lot of people think just simply because the easier schedules?
I that's one of the things I put down, easier schedules, but I think what really complicates things for and you can't argue with 9th easiest. I mean that's analytics, that's data, that's statistics, that's just based on last season. But when you eyeball this thing, you know how the NFL schedule works. If you don't, you're designated 2 divisions that you play, and then the first place team against other teams will face a couple of better teams. The last place team will face easier teams. So the designated divisions are tough. Like the designated divisions are the NFC North this year. No, it's the AFC West. Because they play the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Broncos and the Raiders. So that's pretty tough. But your point is solid. Where I went with it is kind of the speculation or projection of quarterbacks in this division. I mean, it comes down to the quarterback. If Anthony Richardson figures something out, that could be a fly in the ointment. Trevor Lawrence, that could be a fly in the ointment. Or hell, I said Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, or whatever. If Cam Ward is a number 1 overall pick that looks the part, that's where I would maybe say, if I had to make a case, that maybe they could make some noise this year.
We see every year a first-year head coach makes the playoff. I forget how many years that streak's at. I think it might be like 10 straight years. And obviously we know it well with D'Amico Ryans did it here at the Texans 2 years ago. So it's finally the right fit. I know this is like the 4th head coach they've brought in for Trevor Lawrence. I don't know. Maybe this one finally works. We always see these first-year head coaches catch the leagues by surprise. We saw the Colts 2 years ago almost made the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. Maybe Daniel Jones can be to that level. And the Jaguars, by the way, also have the 2nd easiest schedule for the final 7 weeks of the season. So even if they're playing like 500 football, there might be some winnable games to make a run down the stretch of the season. No one was seeing the Vikings winning 14 games last year. I don't think the Lions were even expected to win 15, right? The Packers winning, 12 games last year. I think those were all surprises. This would obviously qualify as surprises as well, but I just worry that the gap, I felt like, has already shrunk a little bit this offseason, and then you look at, they all have easier schedules than the Texans. They might have more winnable games that will further shrink the gap in this division.
No, and you mentioned the back end of the schedule. When you have easier teams at the back end, you're a little more beat up. You maybe know exactly where you are. You've established yourself one way or another. You kind of gain, a sense of momentum, over the course of the back end of the year. The other thing that might come into play here, we know that what the Texans' defense is going to be. There are good defenses in this division. There are flat-out good defenses in this division. And so you steal a game here or there, all of a sudden, things get interesting as well. So I don't think so. I think it's going to be a Texans, wire to wire, so to speak. But those would be the 2 ways I would argue it.
Which team, I'm sure you guys have talked about this, but since I'm just hanging out with you today, which team would you be most both? I do think this is the Texans division. I don't want to sound the alarms here. I think the Texans do win this division and pretty sweat-free, I would like to hope. But which team in this division do you feel like does have the highest upside this year, outside of the Texans?
Man, that's part of the reason I think, there are some big questions. But I don't have a lot of faith in Liam Cohen and the Jaguars, but they do have Trevor Lawrence. We'll see if anything gets unlocked there. I don't have a lot of faith in either Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So there's that. That kind of leaves it down to the Titans, who have a pretty good defensive front. Obviously have added a couple of things on the offensive line, which could maybe help Cam Ward. I guess. I mean, would you say the Titans might be the scariest team in the division?
This year?
Yeah.
I don't know about this year. I think you could kind of
Jaguars?
To me, I'm worried that somebody gonna lock Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And they got some pieces there. Travis Hunter, they got other pieces there too.
Yeah.
Where it be like, man, they clicking now.
I get it. What about you?
I think the Jaguars, yeah. I think so. You add Travis Hunter. Hopefully the new coach gets something out of Trevor Lawrence. And look, they were, 8-3?
Yeah.
Was that 2 years ago now? Before Trevor Lawrence got injured. They did make the playoffs that 1 year with Doug Peterson. So I think there's still some upside there. I think it was Bleacher Report predict them to win 10 games this year.
That's the one. I was trying to remember who it was. I saw it in passing. I was like, 10-7.
Yeah. They have one of the easiest schedules in the league. So things just might line. I don't know if they're a great team, but things might line up where they can have some success this year.
Yeah.
We'll see. We got a long way to go.